A while back, I listened to a really fascinating episode of This American Life in which a Chinese American woman told the story of her grandmother who was dying of cancer but didn't know it. Relatives had chosen to conceal that from her so that she wouldn't be stressed out in her final days. This is apparently something that's pretty common in China. They even convinced a relative to move her wedding like a year earlier so that everybody could gather together and say goodbye to the grandmother, even though the grandmother didn't know it. So as you can imagine, it was a really awkward wedding where everybody was crying, but not tears of joy. It really made me think about whether or not I would want to know if I had a month or a year left to live. Everybody always says things like, live each day as if it's your last, but would that actually be fun? I actually enjoy just vegging out on the couch, playing games on my phone while watching complete garbage television. But if I knew I was about to die, I couldn't do that because I would just feel guilty, like I should be skydiving or robbing a bank or otherwise sucking the marrow out of life. Anyway, the point is that it's complicated, but now there's a new study to shed a bit more light on the issue. The study was done in China, where it's obviously a much more common situation than in the United States. And in this study, researchers found that actually only 1 out of 10 terminal cancer patients actually didn't want to know that they were dying. Compare that to the nearly 40% of patients who actually didn't know their negative prognosis, and you realize how bad that tradition is in which families hide their prognosis from the dying. That's a huge number of people who would actually prefer to know that they're dying but have no idea. This is a huge issue since figuring out how we're going to slough off this mortal coil is maybe one of the most important decisions that we all end up making. I have one friend who has already built his own coffin so that his family doesn't get ripped off by the funeral industry that make you buy a $10,000 box just to get cremated. Meanwhile, I don't even have a will, let alone life insurance or anything like that. I just assume my dog's gonna eat me when the time comes. Even more than figuring out what's going to happen to you after you die, knowing you're going to die also gives you a chance to figure out how you want to spend the last of your days. Not just in terms of whether you want to go skydiving or watch Real Housewives, but more so in terms of what drugs you want to be on, how lucid do you want to be, whether you want to be in the hospital or have a nurse come to your home and take care of you, whether you want to end things when you know what's happening or whether you're happier to be on life support for 10 years. These are really important decisions and they require careful planning. It's easy to say that we should take this data, except that the vast majority of people do want to know that they're dying and then make a rule that says that every person should be told regardless, which of course is the law here in the United States. A doctor has to be honest with the patient. But maybe the better takeaway here is to realize that a significant minority of 1 in 10 people doesn't want to know. And the optimal healthcare system would actually be able to figure out who those people are and abide by their wishes. It might be ascertained just by asking, or we might be able to identify people who would want to do that based on psychological surveys, for instance, to make sure that we only even offer the option to the sort of people who would be interested in that kind of thing. For me personally, I know I would want to know. If I opted out of knowing, I would always assume the worst, no matter what was happening. So I would live every day in a depressive state, convinced that I was about to die, even if I had just been into the doctor for a sniffle or like a splinter removal. But I'm pretty sure it would be clear from any psychological profile that's ever been done on me that that's the case, since I'm a pretty consistent person in that I always want the absolute truth over anything else. I'm interested in what you guys think, though. If you had a year to live, would you want to know about it? Or would you prefer to think that maybe you had a chance to beat whatever disease you have, even if there actually is no chance?